everyone, my name is Jenna, but you guys can call me Jen. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. Hi, hello, welcome to yet another end of the year content video. Today we're going to be talking about some absolutely incredible books that I read this year, but that just didn't quite make the top 10 favorites list. These are, I like to call them my almost favorites. Get ready for this list, my friends, because we're going to dive in. All right, so I have 9 4.5 stars and then 3 4 stars to talk about today. I found it really interesting when I was going through my story graph today when I was like curating this list, because I have been doing a challenge on my TikTok where I have been going through every month and talking about 2 books that are almost favorites, so none of the 5 stars, but like almost favorites of each month to like speak of in a TikTok video for like an advent calendar type of thing. This is the situation. We are just done July, so if you want to go see those are very fun and they're on my TikTok. When I was going through my story graph today, interesting to see some of the 4.5 stars. I was like, I don't really want to talk about that. Like it's like, yeah, it got a really high rating, but I don't know if it's an almost favorite, which is very interesting because then some 4 stars made it into the almost favorites list. So I love rating books, but sometimes my rating, it's one of those things where I run it through the Copile rating system, which has been created by G from Book Roast here on BookTube. It keeps my rating kind of a little bit more like standardized across the board, and it's not just like vibes, which was my rating system for a really long time. And I really like how it makes everything flow and keeps everything nice and neat and tidy. But sometimes this happens where like I liked a 4-star book a little more than a 4.5-star book, but like it wasn't as good of a book, if that makes any sense at all. This is just based on enjoyment is what I'm trying to say. Anyways, we're gonna dive in. We're gonna talk about the 9 4.5 stars first, and then we'll talk about the 3 4 stars after, but let's dive in. Number 1 is To Shape a Dragon's Breath by Monica Blackgoose. I loved this book so fucking much. Like, oh, every time I think about this book, I get even more excited. And I cannot wait for the sequel to come out. I don't know when it is coming out, but when it does, you better believe I'll be eating that up. This is a dark, academic, slower, softer dragon school book. That's basically what it is. It follows Anacus, who is indigenous, and she ends up bonding with a dragon in this moment. And in her world, the like colonizers basically force her to be part of the school because of their rules and regulations. If she doesn't agree, they're basically just going to kill her dragon because they need to, you know, have their hands in everything. But it's such a beautiful story about Anacus and her friends and her learning more about this new world and also learning more about her own heritage through that. It's very interesting. I really enjoyed this. It has fantastic representation for neurodivergency and also different sexualities, because Anacus herself is arguably pansexual and polyamorous, or bisexual, I think a lot of people call her, and polyamorous potentially. I really, really adored this book, and I can't wait for the second one to come out. I'm just gonna eat it up. I'm gonna eat it up. And this has honestly some of my favorite dragons that I have ever come across in fantasy books. Like I've said before, these are my favorite dragons that I've ever read. Yes, I loved them. Literally on page 1, we have a description of a dragon, and it basically sent me to my knees. Like I immediately said on here, I said, this is what I want from a dragon book. And it's stunning. It's stunning. It's absolutely beautiful description. And the writing in here is gorgeous. I adored this, top to bottom. And it's got like my favorite parts of school books. Like, I know I don't mention this author on this channel ever anymore, but it's got the soft, quiet moments of like Harry Potter when they're in the common room learning. It's that times 1,000, soft spoken, lovely, academic. You're learning with the kids. It's wonderful. Then we're going to talk about The First Sister by Lyndon A. Lewis. This was genuinely such a fun surprise because I follow Bill Reads on TikTok, and Bill was the one who talked about this earlier this year and said how much he absolutely loved this book. And I was like, I have that on my shelves. I think I'm going to read it. And one of my friends, Holly on here, Holly Hearts Books, she's read this and I don't believe she liked it very much. So I was like, low expectations, not really anything going into it, but I genuinely adored this book. It was so good. The middle and end had me screaming. I couldn't put it down. All I wanted to do was read this book when I was reading it. I just devoured it. It was so fantastic. I loved the take on a like interstellar war kind of a thing that this was going on. So this is about the first sister, and also about Leto Sol Lucius, and also about Leto's lost partner. So we have those three POVs. We have the first sister, we have Leto, and then we have like letters or messages sent from Hero, who is Leto's partner. It's really interesting because the first sister and Leto are on opposite sides of a war. And honestly, I didn't know how they were going to come together at any point in time. I didn't know how the stories were going to converge, but they did in a very explosive way, and I loved it so much. So the first sister is a religious figure and also sex worker on a ship that is carting soldiers from Earth and Mars, and she ends up getting tasked with a new kind of a target with the brand new captain. What's their name? Saito Ren, basically to prove that this captain is a traitor. And it's their relationship, it's their like coming to know one another, and it's the intricacies of the first sister's knowledge and lack of knowledge of a lot of things. And then it's Leto who's been tasked with finding Hero, who is MIA, missing in action, and basically Leto is sent out to complete the mission that Hero did not complete. So it's both of them and all of that coming together. It's queer, it's wonderful, I love this. Next up, we're going to talk about The Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. This is book 2 in the Farseer trilogy, which is the very first series that is part of the Realm of the Otherlings by Robin Hobb. I am so glad that I finally decided to pick up this trilogy, reread Assassin's Apprentice, and then dive into the rest of the trilogy, because boy, what a ride it was. I adored every second of it, and this was genuinely such a pleasure. I know it is a lot of people's favorites from this trilogy, but it is not my favorite from the trilogy. My favorite is the third one. And that's a little bit of a spoiler for my top 10 of the year, but that's okay. I adored this. It was so fantastic. So the Farseer trilogy basically is a coming of age, slow churning fantasy novel that follows Fitz Farseer, and we are very much in his head as he is learning about a specific kind of magic that he has. It's about the politics of his family that he is a bastard of. It's buckkeep kind of a thing that's what it is. It's just a slow churning fantasy, and Robin Hobb's character work is masterful. I have adored every single book that she has written in this trilogy, and also in the Ship of Magic. I really enjoyed the first one of that one, and I'm currently in that trilogy of the Realm of the Elderlings now. But this one was so good. It took the like setup of Assassin's Apprentice, because that one really feels like kind of like a prequel to the entire fucking Realm of the Underlings. It doesn't really give you the scope of what Robin Hobb is capable of. And I've heard a lot of creators who have read the entire Realm of the Underlings say that yes, Assassin's Apprentice can be a little bit of a slog to get through, but you need to read it because you need to read the Farseer trilogy to get through the entire Realm of the Elderlings, because it's so important and such a baseline foundation of it all. But also that the Assassin's Apprentice is not a reflection of the rest of Robin Hobb's work. And I think that is so true. Even though I've only read 4 of her books, seeing her ability to write this beautiful, slow, churning fantasy change from the Assassin's Apprentice to then Ship of Magic, but mainly in this trilogy, in the Farseer trilogy, I loved it. And I loved how the second book stepped up the game and the storytelling and just kept all the things I loved about the first book and like the slow turning fantasy, and gave us an epic story. And what a book. All right, the next one is The Adventures of Amina Ali by Shannon Chakraborty. Shannon Chakraborty has quickly become, and this is actually the first of 2 on this list of Shannon's books. She has become an auto-buy author for me. I have read her entire novel backlist, I guess. I don't think she has any other books. I could be wrong. I've read 4 of her books this year and every single one of them has been 4 stars or higher. Like, this one is exceptional, and I really enjoyed this. And honestly, after having read her entire City of Brass trilogy now, I think I want to revisit this when the sequel comes out. I don't know when the sequel is going to come out for this one, but I really want to reread this and then dive into the sequel, because I think my enjoyment of this is just going to skyrocket. Why? Because pirates, first of all. Second of all, S.A. Chakraborty's writing and world building is just stunning. Oh my god, the work that she did in the Daevabad trilogy is just incredible. Let's just talk about both of them. The other book by her on this list is The Kingdom of Copper, which is the second book in the Daevabad trilogy. Her storytelling is just absolutely incredible. It's perfect. It's perfect storytelling. Her worlds, her politics are mastery. Oh my god. Anyways, okay, so Amina al-Sarafi, as I said, piratey. It follows the captain Amina al-Sarafi who has retired at the beginning of this book. She has decided to take her life landlocked with her daughter and just live her life until one day this elderly woman knocks on her door and basically blackmails her into doing one last job for her. And so Amina gets the gang back together and gets her ship, goes and does this one last job, and it turns out to be a whole lot more than she expected. It is very queer. It has so much found family in this. It was just so good. I really, really enjoyed this book so much. On that same note, Kingdom of Copper, what a sequel. I know this is a lot of people's favorites in the David Bad trilogy as well. What is it with second books being people's favorite books? I don't know what it is, but I like it. I like it a lot. It's not my favorite of the David Bad trilogy, but it is fan-fucking-tastic. This is a continuation of the story that is set up in the City of Brass. It starts 5 years after the City of Brass, and just continues these harrowing lives of our characters that we know now from book one, and shows honestly such a beautiful way of their changing between book one and book two, and then sets up the stakes for the rest of book two and into book three, and the just insanity that occurs in this. And it's just beautifully politically driven and stunning characters, stunning world. Oh my god, I adore S.A. Chakraborty, and I don't think I will be able to stop talking about her ever, because she's becoming a favorite author. I've only given one of her books 5 stars so far, but 2 of them are 4.5 and the other ones are 4 stars. So she's up there. She's an auto-buy author. So we'll just see if she can become a favorite author and have 3 5 stars in a row or something. The next one I'm going to talk about is Dead Collections by Isaac Fellman. This one I read back for the Trans Rights Readathon and absolutely fell in love with it. It was a recommendation from my friend Sophie, who had been recommending it for a while, and I apologize, Sophie, I should have read this earlier. I should have listened to you a lot earlier, but I'm so glad that I did read it for the Trans Rights Readathon, because it was genuinely such a lovely time. I loved this from a story standpoint and from a literary standpoint and a craft standpoint, because this is a mix of different media. It could be considered a multimedia book, because every chapter is presented as a different file and a different element of an archive, because this follows an archivist who is a vampire, and it's his vampirism, his transness, his falling in love with another person who's also dealing with different gender. It's his as an archivist and his life being stuck in the shadows because he can't go out because he's a vampire, and it was gorgeous, amazing, awesome, and everyone needs to read this. Next, we are going to talk about Bad Cree, which is a pretty recent read of mine, and one of the only non-fantasy books on this list. I've honestly read so much fantasy this year, and I love that for me so much. But Bad Cree by Jessica Johns, this is her debut novel. It was so good. It took everything I love about Indigenous literature and storytelling from multiple different Indigenous books that I've read and also really enjoyed, and put them together in a package that just worked so well for me. So this follows Mackenzie as she is distanced from her family in a moment of grief. Her sister passed away at home and she just left. She doesn't want to be with her family. She doesn't want to be around them anymore. She's in a different city. At the beginning of this, she starts having dreams where physical things are coming back with her through the dream world. It starts with her waking up with a crow's head in her hands. Shit's intense. It is suspenseful. It is, I think, pitched as horror or thriller, but I don't really think it I don't know if it completely falls into that. I think for me, it's a gently creepy book that works for someone who doesn't like spooky stuff. Because it then follows Mackenzie as she goes home to try to figure out this dream stuff that's happening. And it brings in magical realism with the dream magic and a creature that's at large and all this kind of stuff. But it brings in the heart of The Break by Katharina Vermette, which is one of my favorite Indigenous books and one of my favorite books that I read back in university. It brings in the family and the heart of that kind of a book. And it brings in the tenseness and storytelling from Wabgishig Rice's Moon Over the Custard Snow, which is another fantastic book that I read at university, and also takes the magical realism of Sherry de Melin's Empire of Wild and puts it in a big package that just worked for me. Oh, this book was so fucking good, and I think about this on the daily. Another one that I don't own a copy of is The Monsters We Defy by Leslie Penelope. This is a fantastic fantastic standalone heist book set in the 1920s on and around the Black Broadway. I fucking loved this book. It follows Clara Johnson as she has this interesting ability to kind of contact spirits, and she makes deals with spirits for other people, even knowing that like every deal has a price, because you know magic always has a price, as we all know from Rumpelstiltskin from Once Upon a Time. Magic always has a price, dearie. But in here, these deals always have some kind of a price, and Clara knows this very, very, very well, and she's always trying to talk people out of wanting to do these deals, even though that is her livelihood and making these deals is her whole thing. At the beginning of this, she gets contacted by one of the spirits that she talks to a lot about doing a deal and finding this relic to like basically save people, because there's disappearances happening, there's different things happening. So she ends up having to go on this heist by gathering a few people around her to thus get this relic off of this really important person, and bad things happen. It was wonderful. It was so good. The last one that I have as a 4.5 star on this list is Silver Under Nightfall by Rinchu Pecco. You guys might remember this from my journey in the middle of the year to find another 5-star. Because it had been like a month or more since I had found a 5-star, and then it took me almost a full month to find a 5-star. But we came very close with Silver Under Nightfall because this one was so good. I enjoyed this so much, but it just wasn't quite a full 5-star for me. This follows Remy, who is a vampire hunter and someone who kind of keeps a lock on these rogue vampires who are a threat to his community, essentially. He's also the son of a duke, so, you know, he's a rich boy. Not many people like him. He's got a friend who is a vampire, which is very interesting. But when a terrifying new breed of vampires shows up, vampires who can't die, and every time they are killed, they resurrect more animalistic and more feral and more dangerous. Remy ends up having to be paired up with a vampire lord and his wife to figure out what's going on, you know? This is also polyamorous and so sexy. Like, the love triangle in here is a perfect love triangle because it just ends up being a polyamorous triangle of people together, loving each other so much. This book, I couldn't put it down. I ate this up and I just, it was so fantastic. This is so wonderful. Like, it wasn't what I was expecting going in. I don't know why, but this cover vibe gives me more like noir detective vibes. It's really not that. It's more like gothic vampire-y kind of a thing. Remy gives me very, very much the Witcher vibes. Like, he gives me Geralt vibes with his intense ability to fight, and all the fight scenes in here are so good. It's very good. And it's a little spicy too, which we love. Anyways, all right, let's talk about some of the 4 stars that I read this year. 3 of them to be exact. The first one we'll talk about is Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson. This was also a read of mine for the Trans Rights Readathon, and I really enjoyed this one as well. It was genuinely such a delight to read. I had so much fun with this. It's, I think, the first of a trilogy. I could be wrong. It might be a duology, but I know there's a second one out. I think it's a trilogy. But anyways, this follows a coven of women witches who were like a coven when they were kids and have kind of like split ways. One of them is still in charge of everything, and the others have kind of gone their own ways. One of them's kind of, you know, creating her own coven on the side, and very feminist, very amazing, very awesome. And then there's this child that's brought in and is prophesized to be basically their undoing. It's this moment of like, the one who's in charge wanting to kind of lock up, destroy the child, and then her like counterpart, who's also used to be her friend, being like, no, this is a child, we need to take care of them. And then the child being trans, and it's just so good. And the ending had me so shook. What a book. So good. Witchy, found family, coven vibes, just so good. Then we have Barrow of Winter by Hannah Long. This is the only book of Hannah Long's that I've rated under 5 stars. This is definitely a really great read, but it just wasn't my favorite of her series that she has going on, which is the Final Pillage series. I could be wrong. I keep calling them the Hollow Smoke series, but I'm not sure. But this was genuinely still such a great time, and the cover is so shiny, so I'm gonna There we go. This follows Threy, who is the daughter of Winter. It is the first in the whole 4 companion series that doesn't follow Hessa, who is the main character of the first 2 books. But Hessa is her like godmother or something, like they're connected. But Threy wants to know basically if she is immortal or not because she is a child of a god, you know? She really wants to know if she's immortal, but the only way you can really figure that out on your own is if you die. She ends up getting the opportunity to go and spend time with her siblings, the other siblings of Winter, the other children of Winter, this god of Winter. She gets the opportunity to go up north and like get some of her answers. I really enjoyed this. It's very icy, very chilly, and Hannah Long's world building is some of my favorite ever. So really enjoyed this, loved it. Then finally, the last book I'm going to talk about today is the only romance book on this list, and that is Honey and Spice by Bolu Babalola. This was genuinely such a lovely ride. This, you know, like, it's been so long since I've read it. From what I remember, I really enjoyed the reading experience of this. I loved the couple. I loved the fake dating. I love the fact that our main character Kiki has a radio show and it's college age. Usually I don't love university age books, but this was genuinely such a delight, and I really liked the couple in here. It was just so lovely and so warm, and I think this is the one romance book that I read this year that I would recommend to everyone. Anyways, my friends, that is it from me about my almost favorite books of the year. Let me know down below some highlights of your year. I would love to know, and I will catch you in another video very soon. Stay kind and keep on reading.